Hi guys, it's Luetin here, and today we're going to be talking Conquest tactics a little bit. I'm going to be covering a couple, just two things that I think are fairly important to bear in mind when you're playing Conquest, and you know, a lot of people see me playing Rush tons. The reason for this is because I feel like Rush plays generally a hell of a lot better on console than Conquest does. Conquest plays excellently on some maps, but most of the maps are kind of larger, they don't really play out too well. So for that reason my server tends to, and the kind of gameplay that I tend to go for tends to be Rush. But I do have a fair amount of experience in Conquest and the style of the game mode of Conquest. When I was in World of Warcraft, as you know, I had a heavy PvP team and a huge PvP element of my guild at the time, and we used to play 8-10 hours a day solid, like literally game to game, and Arathi Basin was one that I would lead very often, being command of the 15 guys there, and we would generally dominate throughout the day. There were many days where we'd often not lose a single round for an entire day. That's why we were pretty much one of the top horde PvP teams on my server. So when we talk about tactics for Conquest, it's not something that's it's not uncommon to me. But when I play Conquest as well in public games, it can be unbelievably frustrating because it's annoying as hell that still in Battlefield you can't set up a full team. I mean, obviously you can if you have like a private server or whatever, and you're going to do it like that. But for general public games, you can't go in with a full team. It has such limitations because it really is irritating when you end up with people who have no interest in playing the objective whatsoever, and this is something that can really bleed into Conquest much more severely than it does with Rush. With Rush you can kind of muddle through because everyone's focus is generally directed down a kind of a corridor point. You're looking at one objective and everyone's kind of moving in that direction, so even if you have people that aren't really that interested in the objective, they'll still be moving in the same way. But with Conquest, because it's so much more open, this means that people are kind of all over the place, and it means that you can be really weaker in certain areas. So when I talk about tactics and people say, oh, but you can't tell other people what to do or they won't listen to you, etc, etc. I understand that, and that's all worth bearing in mind, but there are some other things that you can do as a general player which will always help your team, and hopefully other people will kind of take this on board as well. The two main things that I want to talk about today are sort of speed of movement, because that is so critical, and people really don't seem to get it, that in Conquest it is about speed for many reasons. Another one is kind of intelligent movement, and those two things kind of pretty much go together. So first of all, let's think a little bit about speed of movement and the intelligent movement. They go so hand in hand, I can't really split them up, to be honest. The speed of movement, let me just very simply go over this first, because this is something I see so often, it drives me mad. What we're talking about, let's say that our team is in controller D and let's say B, okay, and the enemy have got C and A. Now we're obviously in a kind of stalemate situation here. We're going to need to anticipate and move to where we want to go to. Now let's say, for example, that we have a feeling that fairly, the majority of the enemy are kind of in the C area, maybe because we've had multiple contact points with them and we know that there's generally a lot of fire coming from here. Now the difficulty, of course, is that C and A are very close together. It's very easy for them to just move straight down into A. That's why our speed of movement and attack is so critical, okay? Because you don't have time to waste getting to A, because as soon as they start to see that base tick, they're going to send people down onto it, alright? And that's why, let's just say, let's plan this out as an attack movement, alright? So we've got D, and we know that C is generally an occupied area. Now B is maybe weak, it's very quiet. What's going to happen is our team are going to move down to B and cap it. Now here's where the intelligent movement and the speed of movement come into play. We don't want to leave everybody at B wasting time, alright, because they are going to need to get onto A before these guys start moving back around this way. Okay, because as soon as B starts to go down, maybe they're going to send like a squad, maybe 3-4 people, whatever. They're going to send some people this way. So we really want to get onto A as quickly as we possibly can. It doesn't mean that we won't encounter any enemy. It just means that we need to try and move our forces more quickly than the enemy force, so that they don't have a chance to kind of set up their defenses or push us back or clear us out in any way whatsoever. Now the downside, of course, is that whilst we're moving around here, they could potentially push forward to D. It's a kind of a flip point, but let me just explain where I'm going with this. So when we come to take B, basically we're going to start capping that base. Let's say that the enemy actually had that base, alright? We're going to want to start capping that base. Now, let's say we've left maybe 4 or 5 people at D. Okay, let's just put 5 guys in here. Okay, and they're kind of, they're defending and fighting. They're putting a bit of pressure onto C, and they're generally kind of having a bit of a heavy interaction in that area. Now, the rest of our guys have all moved down to B. They're making a big sweeping push down to B. Now, are we going to want to leave all those people at B? We're not, because we want a fast movement. What we want to do is hit B and then straight in and hit A, alright? Fast movement. We want to knock them out of them, okay? What we don't want to do is go to B, wait for it to cap, wait for it to, you know, and then slowly move off together in a long sort of procession all the way along here. That's not what we want to happen, okay? And it won't be successful, because the time that it will take us to do that, it's such wasted time that, you know, you have to bear in mind as well that all this fighting is happening at D, and the longer we take to do that means that these guys over at D are going to have a hell of a more difficult fight on their hands, because they're trying to deal with the rest of the enemy team right here. So what we want to do is we want to start capturing B, okay, and then as we're capturing it, as soon as it gets destabilized, as soon as it gets neutralized, that's when you want to start moving. You don't want to wait for it to cap, and I know that people will hate that because they want to grab the points from the capture, but unfortunately, if you want to actually be more successful, you have to kind of take other factors into consideration. And also, don't worry too much about that cap, because you can be the first one in at the next base and you can get that capture instead. So let's say we've got this neutralized, right, which I'll put a dashed line in. Okay, so we're capping that at the moment. We're going to leave maybe 2 or 3 guys there. If it's really quiet and there's nothing going on, just leave 2 guys, okay? And then everybody else can move up to the next position or move back to reinforce. So perhaps what we do is, as soon as it gets neutralized, we're going to move, let's say, 4 or 5 people, and they're going to make a fast break for A. We're going to maybe send 1 or 2 more people up this way to kind of help reinforce D and get back onto C. So you see what we've done is we've just quickly moved down to B, check it's clear, leave 2 guys capping, and then spread back out. And that should all happen in one easy movement. So it's just down to B, leave 2 guys, move out as soon as we know that it's clear. What tends to happen in public games that I see is that everybody goes to B, and let's say we have, like I say, about 5, 6, 7 guys. They move back to B, and then they all just stay there. And they just sit there like this, waiting for it to capture. And then the base gets captured. And then they start moving out together in one big group. Okay, one big group. And they all just move along to A. The reason that this doesn't work compared to the other way of moving very quickly is that because B gets capped, and because D is maybe a bit weaker at this point as well, they will anticipate you coming to A. Because they know that there's already enemy here at D. You know what you know is what they know. They will understand what's going to happen next. They will realise that as soon as you've capped B, you're probably, you're not going to go back to D. Why would you? You're going to go to A. So they'll automatically start coming back down here, reinforce this position, maybe lock down these corridors, and then they'll probably kill you, or at least put up a strong defence right there. And they're going to block you. And the reason they've blocked you is because it's taken everybody so long to get there. Whereas if you can do it in a much quicker, more fluid movement, you're going to be more successful. So if you go to B, and just to kind of reinforce the point, so we just quickly start capping that, and then before it's even capped, all right, that's the key thing. It's neutralized. Leave 1, 2 people there, and then move back onto A. All right, let's look at something else. Okay, let's look at another classic situation here. Okay, we're going to hold C this time, and the enemy is going to be holding D, A, and B. And this is a fairly common situation to happen in Conquest when your team has not maybe had the best start, or they've been pushed back. Now, let's say that the enemy is strongly obviously at D, maybe they've just capped this, alright, and they're also strongly around A. Now this is a situation people have real problems with, because they often don't really understand what's going to happen. Now this is an unbelievably simple thing to break out of, but I'll explain again about speed of movement and reaction, okay? When you're in a situation like this, it's critical that you move quickly, because you need to turn this situation around very fast before 2 things happen. 1, before they surround you and destroy you, and 2, before they get such a heavy ticket, lead that it's impossible for you to recover from, even if you do start bringing the game back in play. So let's say, for example, that a moment ago we just maybe had control of A or D, it doesn't matter which, and then what they've done is they've capped that base and we're suddenly left with C. So you can go from a situation where you had a 50-50 game. In fact, the point that we were talking about a minute ago, this is exactly, you know, the flip side. You would now be the enemy, okay? So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to use our intel. We know that they're at D, we know that they're at A, okay? We maybe have multiple people marked, and maybe just generally people are kind of aware on our team that there's a lot of contact in those two areas. Now, here's how it will happen in most games. This is generally what will happen. What will happen is people will start moving out from C, they'll probably go to D, and they'll probably go to A. The reason for this is that they're just the two nearest bases, and they'll start engaging enemies and they'll have like a little bit of a fight, okay, and they'll maybe even go from here into D or something, or down to A like this, and they'll have a bit of a fight. And then for the most part what's going to happen is that the enemy will crush you, and unless you're a particularly strong side, and remember, bear in mind, like I've said before, that, you know, every game is different, and okay, maybe you will have like a really strong team and just by chance you kind of got caught out, they stole a base, and maybe you will just destroy them and take it back. But for the most games that I find, it doesn't really go like that. What will happen is this kind of situation, where because they're attacking you from two different points, it makes it very difficult for you to kind of really anticipate where people are coming from, and as a consequence of that, you'll generally get beaten back into there. At the very least, they're going to keep you just in that position and not let you out. At the worst, they could take it back off of you. And they're going to do that generally by sort of moving up. For example, C, a perfect example here is that you'll sit behind this bus and just shoot in. That automatically locks off that road. You can't really go there, you can't even make it out of there alive anymore. Similarly for A, coming out of this stairwell here, they're not really going to be able to do anything, you know, you'll be locked down coming out of there. Now obviously different maps, different bases, it's all going to be very different from time to time. I'm just using this as an example. Some bases, some maps are going to be more open than others, and it'll be very easy for you to escape. But it's good to look at the more kind of severe, dangerous situations. So that's generally what would happen, and what you'd end up in is a crushing firefight. And as I say, if things don't go well for you, then potentially what could happen is they wouldn't even just lock you down, they would actually move in from multiple different positions and crush you. This is if you don't react quickly enough. If they have enough time to kind of gather their forces, beat you down, suppress you, and finally take that position, they're going to take that from you, and then obviously we'll end up in a horrific spawn trap situation, which nobody wants. Okay, so what can we do to turn this around? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to want to move very, very quickly. Now, you might say, well, what happens if they've got you kind of locked down already? That's where the smoke comes in, alright? Smoke is an invaluable tool in these kind of situations, and it's something where the med pack is just not going to help you whatsoever. People constantly saying, Luetin, why don't you use med packs? Why don't you put down med packs? The reason is, multiple people on my team are already carrying med packs, and they're generally strewn around because people drop them like candy all over the place. So it's really not something that I need to carry, whereas smoke is an unbelievably useful tool for this. Let's say already, like I said, that this area is blocked, this area is blocked. It's only going to leave us one choice really, which is, well, we got kind of two options actually, which is that we can go straight down the road here or here. Now that's going to be difficult because either way we still have enemy around, and that's where the smoke is going to come in. And really what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to drop smoke here and here, and then we're going to make a break for it. Maybe we're going to drop multiple smokes, alright? Really create as much confusion as possible in a very short space of time, and then we're going to use that confusion and that smoke to break through the line, and, you know, keep tight in, maybe move in like this, okay? Or we're going to move through down the road and quickly break in. Now, it doesn't matter if you only get through alone, okay? It would be better if you had people with you. And there's two things again that you can do in this situation here. You can either try and cap the base, or if you're in a squad who you know, like your teammates, if they're your friends, or just people that are playing the game well and that, you know, they're not idiots, what you want to do is you can just sit yourself somewhere like this. Don't actually start capping the base, wait for the support. And I showed this in another video. Wait until you got a little squad of 4 guys, and then you can move in together. You'll be much more successful in trying to take that base. But the important thing is to draw the enemy off. That's what we're really aiming to do here. It's not about capturing the position, it's about drawing the enemy off. So now that we've broken through the lines, what's going to happen next is, even if you only have like 1 or 2 people with you, we can start destabilizing this position here, alright? We can start to take that position. And then what's going to happen is the guys A and D, they're going to send a few people back here to try and take that off. And it's a long distance for them to travel. Whilst they are doing that, that may hopefully give our guys at C the opportunity they need to start finally pushing harder onto D or onto A, and maybe take one of those positions back, and then we're back in the game. And even if you fail up here, even if you lose that situation, it doesn't matter, because you've given your team the opportunity to get back in the game in some respect. And that's what we talk about speed of movement. Again, this should happen very, very quickly, alright? It should be very fast. It shouldn't be something that takes ages and ages, because if you wait for a huge amount of time, it's too late. So let's just go through that again in sort of brief. The enemy here got you locked down here and here. What we're going to do, fast breakout, smoke, drop straight down to B, bum, okay, start neutralizing that position. It pulls them back, and then it gives our team the opportunity to get in on these other positions, and it should be as simple as that. And I'd say it only needs like 1 or 2 people to make that break, but the key thing is the speed at which you do it with. You need to do it so fast that the enemy don't have a chance to realize it's happening, so that they kind of panic and have to move. That's the idea. When they're in that situation to begin with, they think they're in a strong position. They're like, hey, these guys have only got 1 base left, we can crush them now. So they're going for the kills, they want to dominate you. They're not expecting someone to go for a fast flank around, and that's really a key thing. Okay, there's a lot that I can talk about, like so much, and I'm going to cover it in other videos as well. But I just want to make one other small point here, and this is, again, it's about speed and intelligent movement. Now, this was a perfect example of something that happened recently. Let's say enemy have got C and D, let's say we're coming up this way, A and B. So we've got 2 bases again, it's a 50-50 situation. Now, something that can be very, very irritating and happens to me so much, intelligent movement, alright? Here's how it goes. Enemy are making maybe, let's say they're making a bit of a push here, they got a few guys sort of in this general area here, and maybe they're sending a few people down to B. Now let's say some of our guys, we've got a couple people down here, just a few, and they're kind of having a bit of a fight. It's kind of going okay, but they're not doing particularly well. Neither's the enemy. We're both kind of losing people. So B is kind of in contention. Now, here's what's stupid. We know that they have D and C. That means that they have multiple routes into A, okay? They can come through here, they can kind of come down through here, they could even maybe run down the road and come back in through that way. So they got several ways that they can get in. What is a really bad thing to do is to send everybody from A in a big train all the way, so like a big group of everyone, move them all in onto C in one big go. And there's a reason that this is not good. It may seem like a good thing to do, and often what happens when you're in game is that everybody sees people moving and they go, hey, those guys are going for this objective, well, we better do that too. Then what happens is they will leave A abandoned, and also it means that they're very, very far away from their friends here at B who are taking a bit of fire. And as I say, this comes back to intelligent movement, and it's all about just kind of looking at the lay of the map and thinking before you move. So don't just go, hey, they're going for there, so I'll follow them. No, actually sort of look at what's going on and think, hey, should I go here, should I go here, should I stay where I am? People's discipline is something that's appalling in games, in public games. They never look at what's going on, they only think about their own little mission, their own sort of tunnel vision. And the thing is, whilst that people will say, oh well, you know, people should be allowed to do whatever the hell they want to do, blah blah blah. It's true, you know, they definitely should. The only trouble is it will often end up actually making them suffer in a game because of the fact that they haven't sort of considered the whole picture. When people are so tunnel visioned into what they're doing, they can actually suffer as players negatively overall later on for the fact that they haven't been more disciplined at that stage. So what's going to happen next? Well, maybe they even are kind of successful when they take C. You know, maybe they do. But the problem is that they've put everyone into this. They've put all their eggs in one basket, as it were. And what's going to happen now is the enemy that have D are just going to do 2 things. They're going to sweep down to A, and they're probably going to block the route coming back in there as well. And then, because we left these guys down at B with no real support, no help whatsoever, the people constantly respawning at D as well are going to continue to reinforce that, and with, you know, some bad luck, we might actually lose B as well. So just by putting everyone towards C, it means that we've potentially lost, you know, 2 other bases at that point. So they might even take B and A off us. They might go for a quick steal, and then look, we're straight back into that horrible, almost spawn trap situation again. And it's all because people didn't think. So what could we do differently? Well, instead of sending everybody to C, what would happen if you're at A? Let's say we got 2 squads at A. All right, let's say we got 4 and 4. And we got 4 guys, like I said, down here at B. No, let's say we got 3, alright, we'll go with 3. And we have 5 there, okay. So the guys at B are having a bit of a fight. Alright, now let's say we see like 4 or 5 guys from A going to C. Should we go with them? No. You know, we don't want to send everybody there. And I have seen this happen in games and oh Jesus, bang my head against the wall. I'm like, why are you all going to one objective? It's so bad. It's like the worst thing you can do because it immediately weakens your entire position everywhere else on the battlefield. It's a terrible, terrible move to make. So let's say these 4 guys, we'll just go with 4. They move up into C. Okay, good job guys. You know, you're going for the objective. You're playing well. These 5 guys, they don't need to follow them. Alright, what they can do is 2 things. They can go and reinforce B, or they can make a separate attack onto D. And there's 2 reasons why they might do that. Let's send 2 guys across to B. Alright, so 2 guys are going to go down through the tunnel and over this way. So we've got 2 heading there. They're going to help reinforce, okay? The other 3 guys right here, what they're going to do is they're going to make a move towards D. And again, sometimes it's not always about being successful. It doesn't mean that you're maybe spreading yourself too thin, it just means that you're trying to engage the enemy. And by going to D, they're going to be doing 2 things. They're going to be distracting the guys at D from attacking B, alright? And they're also going to be kind of putting up a line here to prevent them coming and reinforcing C. So the guys that have moved here, who are not actually capping a base but are kind of moving forward, are doing a very important thing. They're taking people's attention away from B and they're preventing the guys from D from reinforcing C. And in that process, this could actually have a cumulative effect because now that they're over here towards D, it means that these guys are suddenly having to engage here as well as sort of looking down this way. And it could even mean that this firefight ends up sort of stopping because they've had to turn their attention this way. They're thinking, oh my god, they're pushing towards us from D, they're actually being aggressive, they're making an attack, instead of going for like a big chain attack onto C, which was, you know, you don't need that many people to cap that base. And even if it was heavily defended, all that's probably going to happen because of the style that that base is everyone's probably going to get cut down to pieces anyway. So it doesn't really make much sense to send everybody there. So let's say as well that, you know, we've drawn enough attention. The guys from B and the 2 that came over here are going to be able to reinforce this force right here so that they can then actually make a push up the road. And suddenly our game plan is starting to look a little bit more, you know, interesting. It's starting to look a bit stronger than the other game plan where we pretty much got wiped out because we were so weak in comparison. And let's say that these guys then capture C because, you know, they haven't had any reinforcements from D. Hey, look at this. Suddenly we're in a much stronger position than the gameplay that we were looking at before. And let's just remind ourselves of that, okay? The gameplay that happened before. Okay, so this was our layout before, and let's just remember what happened here. So what happened was, instead of spreading out nicely, we sent everyone to C, okay? And even if we captured that, we could end up in a weaker position because we didn't reinforce the guys at B. And remember what happened then was the enemy took B because we were so weak there. They then would have swept around to A, and these guys from D also crept around and stole A from us. And remember, look how quickly they were in a losing situation there, simply because we put all our eggs in one basket. Let's turn that around. And again, just remind ourselves what happened when we played it out the other way. So we had a couple of guys here, we had a few more guys over here, and a few more guys here. So instead of doing what we did there, we sent a few to C, and then we split the rest of the team this way, going like this, alright, which forced the enemy to engage us here and here, and it weakened them over here. They couldn't get back in to reinforce C, so that means that we maybe take C, alright. And even if we don't take C, it enables these guys here to push up to D as well as from A, and suddenly, you know, we're looking in a much stronger position. Maybe we don't take C, maybe we take D instead. Doesn't matter. The point is we've stressed them, we've pulled them off of different positions, we've weakened them overall as a team, and it means that we can get in on the enemy. So a couple of things there today, guys. I hope it's made a little bit of sense. If it hasn't, please ask me some questions in the comment section below. I'll always try to answer as I can. But remember, the most important things is all about speed of movement. You need to hit those bases before they have a chance to realize what's happening. Let's just think about that as one last point, because it's pretty important. Let's just take 2 bases, alright? We won't make it complicated, alright? Let's say most of the enemy are over here at A, alright? And we're here at D. Now we can be having a bit of a firefight here between the 2 teams. But if we're going to send some people down to B, we need to do it fast, and we need to, you know, reinforce to capture that A position, because the longer we take to do it, the more time they have to react. If we go down to B, as soon as we start capping it, they're going to know we're capping it because it'll flash for them, you know. So they know immediately as soon as you start to capture it, which is why you have to be prepared for them to counterattack. So you don't want to end up just having loads of people sitting down here waiting, because what will usually happen is that as you have so many people down here, they will send a reinforcement down here and here, okay, and you'll end up in a horrible bottleneck position and they'll just kill everyone. It's much better to start moving out before it's even finished capping, right? Let's remember that from the first one. You move out from a couple of different positions, and then even if they start to counterattack, it means that you've got a buffer. Alright, you've got a line of defense now there rather than actually at the base, which is what we don't want to happen. So it just puts you in a stronger position, and it's all about those buffer zones as well, remember. Buffer zones are really, really important for me when I'm playing sort of tactically and when I'm thinking about these kind of things, because it makes such a massive difference to the game. Would you rather have to fight at the base here where you're in a horrific bottleneck and they can just shoot down in until they eventually slaughter everyone, alright? Or would you rather be fighting out here, further away from the base, sort of here and maybe here on the road? Would you rather be fighting there? You would. The reason is that even if you get killed here, they still have to travel some distance before they get anywhere near the base, which will give you and the rest of your teammates a chance to respawn and perhaps even reinforce it from other areas. So that speed of movement once you've started capping a base is incredibly important. A general good rule of thumb for me is, you know, if two people are capping it and it doesn't seem like there's too many enemies around, just wait until you've neutralized it and then move forward, and then hopefully you have a much more fluid, much more fast game. So that's been my little tips about Conquest today, guys. Hope it's been clear. I know it's been a little bit hectic at times, a little bit heavy going. Feel free to answer me any questions or other things that you would like me to cover in previous topics, any situations you have particular difficulty with. I do have some of my own that I'll be covering as well in upcoming things, so I'm going to try and do these a little bit more frequently because I know people like the tactics stuff. The last point, as I say, to remember, I know that public games are not ideal for this kind of thing, but you would be surprised how many times it does actually play out. Not always. Sometimes you're going to have mindlessly frustrating games which just, you know, nothing seems to go right. But I do find that, you know, it does help to keep this stuff in mind. And then if you can tell other people the same thing, then they, you know, you'd be surprised other people start to keep it in mind as well. So thanks for watching today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed. Please like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time for some more tactics with me, Luetin.